Moi drodzy, Nvidia, największy twórca kontentu związanego z grami From Software na świecie tak naprawdę, nagrał filmik z Nightreigna, omówienie po graniu 6 godzin w ten cudny produkt. Czy cudny, no to zaraz zobaczymy, nie?
Recently, I played 6 hours of Elden Ring Nightreign, and
Kurde, 6 godzin to dużo.
in for that entire time. This game is addictive, it's intense, it's way faster paced than I expected, and I think it's gonna be a hit. So let's talk about it.
Dawaj to.
Characters have just left the round table hold.
Czyli to jest
and
startowa
day one
cutscenka,
is
tak?
about to begin.
Oho.
Your goal in
Ale ładne
Nighreign
to.
is to survive each
Ja lubię na te szczegóły zwracać uwagę, sorry, ale spoko to wygląda day one.
day as a ring of rain closes in around you and your team. Then, at the start of day 3, you'll fight one of 8 major bosses using all
Dobra
of the
chłopaki, to co, sklepowa sadyba czy lepki lasek?
start of day 3, you'll fight one of 8 major bosses using all of the randomized loot and buffs that you've accumulated over the course of your run.
Twisted
Now,
Towers,
every
czy
session
tam
you
Tilted.
play in Nightreign is supposed to be somewhat unpredictable. You won't always explore the same map, or receive the same loot, or face the same enemies. The one thing, though, that I found very predictable in every single one of my Nightreign sessions was this feeling of pressure. The pressure not just to survive,
Presja
but the
czasu.
pressure to get stronger. Because if you don't get powerful fast, there's no way you'll defeat the final.
To jest akurat bardzo ważne, żeby tu była ta presja, bo to też odbiera potencjalne znudzenie się tematem. Jeżeli cały czas widzisz, jak ten krąg się zwęża i zwęża, wolniej, szybciej, każdy dzień trwa tylko 15 minut, a jednak mapka wcale taka mała nie jest, no to chcesz jak najszybciej, jak najwięcej przemierzyć, nie? Pytanie, jaka będzie optymalna strategia dla teamu 3-osobowego? To znaczy, czy bardziej opłaca się rozdzielić, czy bardziej opłaca się iść razem w trójkę na jedno miejsce i szybko je załatwić, nie?
Final boss. You can kind of see that pressure in action here. These characters just rested at a grace and leveled up and ran because the rain is coming and you don't have much time.
Dobra, czyli widzę, że jak jesteś poza kręgiem, to nie umierasz od razu, tylko po prostu tracisz powoli zdrowie raczej.
In our playthrough session, we would have to make these split-second decisions about where to go and what to do and, most importantly, whether we had the time to do it.
Kurde, tu nie będzie takich momentów, że sobie staniesz, popatrzysz na Limgrave, czy tam Limwelt, jak oni to tam nazywają, i pomyślisz sobie, dobra, tu bym mógł pójść, jaki mam build? To sobie pójdę tu, a może tu, a może tam pójdę? Nie, będzie tak. Dobra, szybko, do najbliższych ruin, ja natychmiast, potem się zastanowię, co dalej. Muszę szybko zlutować to i tamto. Wiesz, tu będzie straszny zapierdziel. Tempo tej rozgrywki wydaje się być giga mocne.
So often it was a choice between defeating a boss and claiming its loot or running away and living to fight another day. So many subtle changes have been made to the mechanics of Elden Ring as
Podwójny
well,
skok.
and all of these changes have
Znaczy,
been made in
łapanie się
the name
krawędzi
of
bardziej, o.
speed and efficiency. For example, you can now vault easily over objects and even enemies as well.
W końcu
to
można
get where
wykorzystać
you
ten
need to
słaby
go.
punkt.
Gone are the days where you need torrent to traverse the map. Now you can press L3 to activate a powerful sprint, and you can also activate spirit springs on foot, which vault you so high up into the air. Also, there's no fall damage in Nighreign,
To jest
so
zarąbista
from
zmiana.
high places it's easy to justify jumping down and getting to where you need to be.
Oni dosłownie każdą rzecz i każdą animację dostosowali tak, żeby cię nie zatrzymywała. Wszystko. Nawet dodali tutaj kancelowanie animacji upadania rolem z Dark Soulsów. Chcą te pół sekundy ci zaoszczędzić, patrz. Bum.
Let's talk about the different
Wszystko.
classes, the different Nightfarers that you
Każda
can choose
najmniejsza
to play
rzecz.
in this game. This is the Recluse, a mage character that, like other characters, has an ability and an ultimate that you can use. They've turned the HUD off for the footage that they've given us, but I remember what these abilities and skills looked like, so I've drawn them,
Aha,
and this
dzięki
is where
Wati.
they are usually on screen. You're activated
Jezu, ale chyba nie takie duże, co? Bo to już wygląda jak mobilka,
ability is on the left and your ultimate is on the right. Both of these circles fill up over time, and when they're full, that's when you can use the ability or the ultimate.
To klasycznie.
Now, the Recluse has an ability that is actually much more complicated than the other characters' abilities, and I think they designed it this way because the Recluse is designed to be a backline character. In Nighreign, the spells you cast are tied to the weapons you pick up, so...
Dzięki Paweł za Prima. To jest ciekawy sposób w ogóle wykorzystania czarów i inkantacji. One są przypisane do broni, właśnie tak jak Wati mówi. To znaczy podnosisz sobie Seala i on ma na przykład heala i rzucenie kamieniami, podnosisz innego Seala, on ma, nie wiem, Catch Flame'a i Kometę Azura, czy to cokolwiek, nie? Wszystko jest jakby spięte z itemem, to nie jest tak, że możesz osobno w wielu płaszczyznach edytować te przedmioty. Całkiem spoko się to wydaje.
You usually only have 1 or 2 or 3 or
Fajna
4
animacja.
spells on hand. So, From Software has given mages another system to sort of micromanage while they're standing in the backline casting spells. Let me explain really quickly how it works. Basically, whenever an enemy or a teammate gets tagged by a certain type of damage, like fire or magic or holy, a little marker will appear on them, and then the Recluse can absorb that type of energy, getting a little bit of mana, but more importantly, filling out one of these small orbs. Then, when you've acquired 3 elements, you can unleash the Recluse's
Możesz łączyć
ability,
3 różne
generating a
żywioły
unique spell
i w zależności od tego, co połączysz, dostaniesz różny efekt. Dowalona głębia się tu wydaje w tej umiejętności akurat jednej konkretnej.
based on the combination of elements you've acquired.
Jak Magika, no. Giga fajne.
So, a huge part of this character's skill expression is going to be understanding intuitively what these different combinations of spell are and whether you're in the right position to cast them. And this is just this character's ability. They obviously have an ultimate as well, and this one is more straightforward. Basically, after a short delay, you can mark nearby enemies with this red tag. And
Widać, że podczas ulta masz niewrażliwość na obrażenia, nie?
once marked, if anyone on your team hits them, they will regain health and mana, which is incredible for
To jest giga
the
mocne.
sustained health of your party. Now, when you cast an ultimate from any character, your character actually becomes invincible while they're casting it, which in the case of the Recluse is especially handy, as you can see in this footage where they use it to sort of mitigate all of the aggro that they're receiving. Okay, so the Recluse is the most complicated character to explain. They also even have a passive ability, just like the other characters do. But I don't
Pasywki.
really know what the Recluse's does. I think it regenerates mana somehow. Anyway, let's talk about the next character, Wilder, who is very much a jack of all trades. Wilder's hookshot ability is on a very
No to jest
short
taka basic
cooldown, and
postać.
you'll
Jak
find
nie wiesz,
yourself
czym grać,
using
to
it a
grasz
lot.
nim. Tak się
On
wydaje
small
przynajmniej.
enemies, it pulls them towards you, and on larger enemies, it pulls you towards them.
Zajebiste.
One thing worth noting is it's easy to chain the hookshot into different attacks, like you can see here.
To jest giga dobre, że możesz łączyć animację przyciągania się i już zacząć wymachywanie mieczem, żeby dobrze sobie stajmować. Jak dolecisz do przeciwnika, możesz już go uderzyć od razu. Mega fajne. Pytanie, czy możesz na przykład używać konsumabli wtedy i zrzucić jakimś garnkiem podczas lotu.
Also be aimed manually, hitting the terrain and launching you forward. Now, Wilder's ultimate also uses his left arm. The grappling hook opens up for an explosive blast. This blast can
Giga
be
OP.
charged, it can be
Stageruje.
comboed with your running animation and the hookshot animation, and it stuns enemies. In this case, it actually staggered the enemy, allowing for a critical hit, but on every single enemy and boss I used it against, it also stunned them for a short amount of time, which was this unique animation that allowed my teammates to sort of get a moment to breathe or do extra damage. Wilder's passive ability is a one-time use effect that allows him to completely negate any instant of damage that would have killed him.
Ej, dobra, zajebista pasywka. Masz dodatkowe życie na nim.
You might have just seen it
Jedno.
activate there.
Oho.
Basically, Wilder does this brief moment of inspired acrobatics
Boom.
and gets a second chance instead of being downed. Next, let's talk about the Guardian. So the Guardian's passive ability is this shield
Ptaszor.
stance, I'm pretty sure, which increases your guarding capabilities at the expense of your movement. Their ability is this whirlwind attack, which seems to get rid of environmental effects like the Death Blight here, but Moreover, its main function is to interrupt enemies, so that your teammates can
Nie
get
zdziwię się, jak to też odbija pociski, jak to godrikowe. Skoro on jest Guardianem, no to by miało sens po prostu, jeżeli te wiry by odbijały projectile.
is a really strong melee support character, acting as a tank, but also as a tank sort of support for other characters around you. Their ultimate too is very team-based, with this aerial dive bomb that is excellent for reviving your teammates, because remember, you have to attack your teammates to revive them.
O
This
tym
has a
mówiłem
secondary
wczoraj, jak oglądaliśmy materiał TV gry, że obszarowe umiejętności będą najbardziej OP, bo mogą zadawać obrażenia przeciwnikowi, a jednocześnie wskrzesić sojusznika.
effect. I'm pretty sure of fortifying the teammates that are near the area of effect, giving them increased poise for a short time. I make it sound like the Guardian is purely a support character, but that dive bomb will be excellent for clearing groups of small enemies as well, and accumulating runes from killing enemies and strengthening all of your characters and leveling up is a huge part of the game, so that kind of group clearing is a really good offensive capability as well. And speaking of offensive capabilities, this is the Duchess, who was the character that I played the most in this demo.
Muszę tym
Her
pograć.
passive is this sidestep dodge that's
Znaczy, każdym będę chciał zagrać, ale tam mnie jara najbardziej, szczerze.
similar to the Bloodborne
Najbardziej
dodge,
agresywna się
making
wydaje.
her very well suited for anyone who prefers a more aggressive playstyle. Her ability recharges extremely fast, like you can use it every 10 seconds or so, and it's a sort of stopwatch themed ability which takes into account the last few seconds of damage
To
that
jest
that enemy has taken.
Tak OP. Wyobraź sobie, że mówisz do swoich sojuszników, użyjcie swoich ultów teraz, zadają w ciągu sekundy wszystkie swoje obrażenia, które mogli zadać w największym możliwym momencie i ty używasz skilla, żeby powtórzyć ostatnio zadane przez 2 sekundy obrażenia. I maksymalizujesz damage dwukrotnie. Przecież tak można bossa tym zerżnąć.
And duplicates it. This effect is shown by
Tylko żeby się
a
dobrze
spirit
dogadać
that
timingowo po
appears
prostu.
and sort of shows the damage that is being duplicated. Because you're so aggressive, the Duchess naturally gets a lot of aggro.
To też jest
but
super. I
this
wiecie
is-
czemu? To jest super nie do tam skradania się przy potworach. Bossy też ponoć cię nie widzą na tym. I w związku z tym, jeżeli byś chciał na przykład wskrzesić jakiegoś sojusznika, to możesz to zrobić na niewidce.
is offset by her dodge, but also by her ultimate, which is a cloaking spell that cloaks you and your nearby allies, making you way less likely to get aggro and just enabling a few different things
Giga
within
dobra.
the context of the game. For example, you can use it before a fight to get the jump on enemies, you can use it in the middle of the fight to disengage from enemies, or
To jest
something
tak
that's
cinema
especially good
fight.
is using it to safely resurrect your teammates once they get downed. So
To
when you
jest
die
jeden z fajniejszych designów bossa, jaki oni wymyślili, nieironicznie. No, tak mi się podoba.
in this game, you fall to the ground, you crawl extremely slowly, and a little circle appears above your head. This little circle is basically like a health bar that your teammates have to attack and deplete in order to resurrect you. The first time you're downed, you only have one of these purple bars, the second time you have 2, and the third time you have 3,
Okej, im więcej się wywalasz, tym trudniej cię wskrzesić. Wydaje mi się to mega logiczne, no.
meaning that every subsequent time you die, it's
Mam
more
nadzieję, że każdy z tych Night Lordów będzie unikalny jak ten pies. Ja też mam taką nadzieję, ale liczę na jedną rzecz, że jeden z tych bossów nie będzie unikalny. No kurwa. Wchodzisz na 8 bossa, a tamten
more risky for your teammates to try and resurrect you because they have to stand there hitting you while avoiding aggro for quite a long time. And with some of these bosses, avoiding aggro is not easy. These bosses will often be a 3-part fight where you just have them on you the entire time. So resurrecting your teammates is
kurwa, ile jeszcze? Ja pierdolę, jeszcze 18 godzin muszę czekać. Jezu, kurwa, daj mi zagrać.
definitely a tricky thing to pull off sometimes. It's also something that takes the damage you deal into account. So the more damage you do, the faster you'll resurrect your teammates, and so
To jest giga
now I
dobre,
think we
patrzcie,
should talk
odpalił niewidkę i z łuku nawala, żeby wskrzesić sojusznika. No giga można fajnie to łączyć.
about how to make your character stronger, how to make you do more damage and take more damage and survive. Okay, so the footage they gave us is really quite good. It does a good job of showcasing things that are important to the game, but RP walking like this is not one of them. If you did this in game, you're teammates will scream at you like, you don't have time to do this kind of thing. You are evaluating weapons
Trzeba
and
zapieprzać.
items and stats as fast as you can because you also have to think about where to go next, and yeah, it's just crazy. So a big part of skill expression is being able to look at a weapon and saying, okay, this suits my build, okay, I'm gonna work towards this, or I'm gonna leave this one behind, or I'm gonna give this one
Ale
to
widzę
it.
jedną rzecz, nie ma nic związanego z Shadow of the Earth, czyli dodatkiem. Możliwe, że to będzie w DLC-ku właśnie, który oni chcą wprowadzić do tej gry.
Teammate, that sort of thing. And a part of what
So?
makes this so
Na
much
razie nie
simpler than
widziałem
Elden
nic.
Ring, but also so much more complex, is that yes, weapons have been simplified in the sense that they have one number associated with the damage they do, and it's quite clear if they inflict a status effect like Scarlet Rot. It's obvious if you've played the base game which skill is tied to the weapon, but what makes this so much more complex is that every single piece of equipment now comes with passive buffs
To jest spoko, tylko sorry, ale Improved Charge Attack z 9% nic praktycznie nie zmienia. Ja mam nadzieję, że to będą lepsze pasywki.
that affect your character even if the weapon isn't actually in your hand. So you have 6 weapon slots in this game, and you want to fill every single one of them because every weapon will confer a different passive buff that will affect the main weapon that you have in your hand. So say, for example, these 3 armaments drop for you. Which ones would you take with you? If you're playing a melee character, the Tree Spear might be great because it actually has a really good charge attack and it increases the damage that charge attacks do, so you might want to base your build more.
No, na 1,000,000% bym wziął, kurde, Great Omen Cleaver. Mam wyjebane w Charge Attacki, bo to ma krwawienie i ma Crack Blade'a. Oczywiście, żebym to wziął.
Around a charge attack playstyle. Or if you have the Duchess on your team, you might want to grab the bleed weapon because
Bardzo szybką ewaluację trzeba będzie przeprowadzać, nie? Za każdym razem dropi ci, nie wiem, 10 itemów z jakiegoś bossa, musisz natychmiast się dogadać, kto jaki item bierze, bo domyślam się, że itemy są łączone, który ci najbardziej pasuje. Tylko teraz pytanie, czy możesz normalnie kataną grać na magu? Ale to pewnie nie jest opłacalne po prostu.
well with the stopwatch ability that duplicates damage. Being able to spot these synergies in an instant and try to make your build on the fly was a really big part of what made this game so fun to me. You should also be evaluating consumables because you can only carry 4 stacks of any one consumable.
Ciekawa rzecz, możesz consumably używać w skoku, z tego co widzę, patrz.
Evaluating consumables because you can only carry 4 stacks of any one
Podstawowej grze nie
consumable
możesz.
at any one time.
Wszystko dla
And
szybkości.
consumables are really good now. Firebombs are now handheld nukes that can be thrown in
Giga
midair,
spoko, no.
and weapon buffs can be applied to any weapon, and they're powerful, so bear that in mind. Another thing that's really important is ideally you'll have someone on your team who's really good at quickly evaluating where it will be best to go next. There are a lot of important landmarks in this game, and many of them will be recognizable across multiple sessions. For example, you see that black rise off to the right there? So if you solve the puzzle and make your way to the top, you'll get a choice of 3 armaments and or buffs to choose from, which usually is a reward that's exclusive to when you kill bosses in this game. So basically every landmark has a boss within it, but some have interesting things as well, like we're currently diving down to Kenneth Heights Castle, which showed up a few times for us in our run, and inside this room there was a map on the table, and when you interact with the map, it actually reveals points of interest that
Zajebiste.
usually wouldn't be marked on.
Update'uje ci mapę. Giga fajne. Kurde, mi się mega podoba to, że niektóre lokacje są oparte faktycznie po prostu na zlutowaniu ich, niektóre na bossach, a niektóre, tak jak ten Rani's Rise, możesz normalnie zagadkę rozwiązać i też masz z tego jakieś itemy. Wszystko zależy od tego, na co chcesz poświęcić czas. I czy jesteś pewny, że to poświęcenie czasu się opłaci. Kurde, tu rozkmin będzie bardzo dużo, zwłaszcza właśnie przez istnienie tego timera, bo gdyby go nie było, to by nie miało żadnego sensu i znaczenia, ale to, że ten okrąg się zawęża cały czas, ma mega dużo sensu.
For
Nadaje
example, the locations of
gigadynamiki
these silver
całej
scarab
rozgrywce.
beetles would show up, and whenever we defeated one of these, a talisman would drop.
Z tego
Each
talizmany
character has
dropią,
2
okej.
talisman slots, and being able to loot a talisman usually was a really big power
Aha, czyli talizmany i tak istnieją, mimo tego, że są pasywki na broniach dające troszeczkę takie talizmanowe rzeczy.
spike for one member of our team. And I don't have footage of it, but Kenneth Height's map also revealed the location of merchants on the map, and
Są
these
kupcy.
merchants were always next to a smithing table, and they always sold one type of smithing stone, which would have allowed you to level up your weapon. This is probably a really important mechanic to interact with if you find a
To na pewno jest giga ważne, bo jeżeli znajdziesz bronię epicką i będziesz mógł użyć po prostu kamienia, żeby ulepszyć level broni, to ona pewnie się zmieni w legendarną i to będzie giga spike. To trzeba będzie umieć wykorzystać dobrze.
merchant, because weapons have different rarities as well, which is something I should have mentioned. There's a common level 1 rarity, there's a rare blue level 3 rarity, there's an epic purple level 9 rarity, and we only found 2 of these, but there is a legendary rarity as well that requires you to be level 12 to equip it. I'll admit there were runs where I was like, ah man, we didn't get any good loot that run, like we didn't find that many epics or legendaries, and that could be a bit frustrating. However, I suspect that the merchants and their smithing tables will be a way to consistently upgrade a weapon that might be common, but it might have a really good buff that you want, and so I think upgrading weapons could be a way to sort of smooth out the randomness of the game. At the end of every day, you face a major boss, so there were 4 different types we
Ty
could
co
face.
to jest za deszcz magiczny?
Every day, you face a major boss.
Widzicie to
so
z lewej? Co to jest?
There were 4 different types we could face in this demo, and they were all very difficult, especially the ones that split into multiple versions of themselves or had multiple ads that you had to deal with, because that required everyone in your team to fulfill a role, and the strategy you use against these bosses will play a huge part in your success. For example, we had someone on our team who was not as familiar with Elden Ring, so they ended up taking on a tanking role where they kind of held up their shield and tried their best to keep aggro rather than dealing damage, and they did a
Wzięli
great job
chłopa
of
jako
that.
mięso armatnie.
That worked really well because they could do something like distract the demi-human queen all by themselves, while me and a more competent player were able to DPS this demi-human swordsman down and then go back and help the tank with the one they were aggroing. There were strategies for every boss like this, and I really enjoyed coming up with ways to defeat these bosses on the fly and accounting for things that went wrong within the fight. So what you're seeing here is the end of day 1, where they've defeated the major boss, and now they get to claim a reward.
Buffik,
Like many rewards in this game, it's a choice
jak
between
Hades,
3 different
roguelike
options.
typowy.
Sometimes it was a choice between
Jakie to są buffy? Dłuższy czas trwania speli, status efekty leczą i flaszka powoli odnawia HP.
in this game, it's a choice between 3
Nie
different
takie złe te
options.
buffy, nie?
Sometimes it was a choice between
Ale zobaczcie, że te buffy Continuous HP Recovery plus 7. To jest jakby level tego? Nie wiem.
effects and buffs for your
Może chodzi po
character,
prostu o to, że 7
sometimes
HP
weapons,
dostajesz.
sometimes both. And again, you have to make a really split-second decision on what is best for you.
Ocenka DLC do Pinokia? Kurde, no ciężko mi ocenić coś, co jeszcze nie wyszło.
You and your team. And then at the end of the day, the Nightreign recedes, and you can go out and explore again. But bear in mind, I'm pretty sure everything you killed on day 1 stays dead on day 2, so it was important to keep progressing around the map and finding new places to explore.
I tam mgła resetuje odświeża dzień.
Eventually, everything culminates in this, your final fight against the chosen.
Dobra, czekaj, czyli jeżeli dobrze rozumiem, trzeci dzień to nie jest lutowanie, po prostu trzeci dzień to walka, tak? Tylko 2 dni lutujesz. To jest zajebiście szybkie, bo to będzie trwało 45 minut max. Ja myślałem, że to będzie koło godziny, bo liczyłem, że trzeci dzień też jest lutujący, ale nie.
Set out to face when you left the Round Table Hold. In this case, our final boss was called Tricephalus, a 3-headed hound that periodically would split into 3 parts, one for each member of your group. It's in this boss fight and boss fights like this that you realize Nighreign really was designed for 3 people.
No.
Yes, they probably could have designed enemies so that they scaled with the amount of people in your party, but there's something to be said for not compromising on your boss design around that fact. You know, these bosses feel like they were designed to be taken on with 3 people.
W tę grę na
and
pewno będzie
everyone
grało się
in your
lepiej w
party
kilka
is
osób.
supposed to have a different role.
Zwłaszcza jeżeli myślisz o tych synergiach, nie? Jeżeli chcesz łączyć status efekty, jeżeli mag zbiera różne inne magiczne efekty, które teammateci nakładają, żeby razem produkować wtedy jakiś super czar. Jeżeli ta Duchess powtarza damage zadany przez ostatnie 2 sekundy nie tylko przez siebie, ale i przez innych. Ta gra jest totalnie pod multi.
These fights as a result. So, that's Nightreign. I mean, I could go on about all the different little things I've discovered, but I don't have footage for it right now, so I think I'll just give you my thoughts on the game.
Dawaj.
Obviously, somewhat biased. I run a From Software YouTube channel. You have to take what I say with a grain of salt, but I really did have so much fun playing this. In retrospect,
To na pewno będzie dobra zabawa. Ja jestem przekonany, że będę się fajnie bawił w tej grze. Tylko pytanie nie jest, jak będę się bawił, tylko ile będę się bawił. To jest nieironicznie jedyne pytanie, jakie ja mam w tej grze. I mi się wydaje, że każdy takie pytanie sobie zadaje. Bo wszystko zależy od randomizowania, od losowości, od liczby permutacji tego świata. I jeżeli tego będzie mało, no to szybkie 170 zł na weekend, 2 weekendy zabawy i dziękuję, dobranoc. Ale może być z tego giga value na granie sobie praktycznie cały czas wieczorami, jeżeli tylko zrobią to tak, jak sobie wyobrażam, że mogliby to zrobić, nie? Obstawiam, że to wcale nie jest tak trudna gra jak typowy Souls-like, że ona jest bardziej skierowana do casuali. Pewnie sobie troszeczkę lepiej będą ludzie znający Soulsy w tym radzić. Chociaż może tempo ich przytłoczy. Może będę totalnym ściekiem przez to, że nie będę mógł się zdecydować na to, co chcę lutować, nie? Ale wydaje mi się, że no, jeżeli jakimś skillem się cechujesz, jakąś znajomością gry, to będzie ci trochę łatwiej w tej grze niż typowemu graczowi, w związku z czym będę w stanie szybciej ograć cały, nazwijmy to, content, który ta gra ma do zaoferowania. I nie mówię o testach, tylko ogólnie. Więc bardzo jestem ciekawy, ile to zabicie 8 bossów mi zajmie, nie? I czy będę faktycznie, czy ta gra będzie na tyle fajna, że po zabiciu 8 bossów będę chciał to powtarzać? Bo to jest pytanie, nie? Czy będzie to na tyle ciekawe i atrakcyjne, że mimo, że już zrobię każdego z tych bossów, to będę chciał sobie rozegrać jeszcze jednego, drugiego, trzeciego hunta na tego bossa, nazwijmy to.
Analysis of the game previously, because previously a big point I mentioned was that, you know, Nighreign will allow you to get immersed in this ever-changing world and take in the scenery and just enjoy like a first playthrough of Elden Ring again. This isn't that. Like, you don't have time to appreciate this world sometimes. Instead,
Okej,
that
czyli to aż
feeling
tak
is
zapieprza
replaced
wszystko.
with this rush to explore and get stronger and overcome
Każda
difficulty.
sekunda się
And
liczy tu.
when your build comes together just right and that allows you to kill even more bosses even faster and get even stronger.
Wiecie, co jest najgorsze? Że z tego, co mówił Frozy, to ja tej losowości nawet nie doświadczę na testach. To będzie prawdopodobnie cały czas ta sama mapa, więc ja sobie po prostu sprawdzę mechaniki tej gry i to, jak się biega i to, jak się klika, ale faktyczną grę i to, co z niej będzie można wyciągnąć, dowiem się dopiero po premierze, niestety.
It's a great feeling, and over the course of our play session, you know, we finally had one run where everything came together perfectly. We got the items we wanted, we managed to execute our strategies perfectly, and we finally faced off against the final boss and managed to take it down. If you have a friend or two who are into Elden Ring as well, and you think you can all team up and take on this game together, I think it's going to be like one of the best co-op experiences you've ever had. My main concerns with this game come from the fact that, you know, if you don't have someone else to play this with, will this game still be great played with randoms or played by yourself?
Wątpię,
I'm not
że
as
aż tak.
sure of that.
No.
And I think come the network test in a couple of days, people aren't going to have that many friends to play with who also got into the network test, and so I think some of the feedback might be more negative because of that. But as it stands, everyone I know had a blast playing this together, especially side by side in the same room with other people. It was just an unforgettable experience. The other thing I'm curious about is when the full game releases, how random will the maps be? In this demo build of the game, again, we could only play one of 2 maps, but we've kind of been led to believe that
Dwie mapy.
maps will be somewhat procedurally
No właśnie.
generated and that they'll
Oni cały czas gadają, że jakieś wulkany będą się respić, że jakieś bagna trujące co chwilę będą się pojawiać w różnych miejscach, że ta mapa będzie co podejście totalnie inna. W każdym wywiadzie to jest. I z testów to w ogóle nie wynika. Teraz pytanie, czy to celowy zabieg, żeby jeszcze to potestować i potem dopiero dać, ale dziwne, że nie dali tego doświadczyć ludziom testującym grę.
stitch together different zones. And yeah, the demo had 2 maps seemingly that you could explore, and over the course of our session and over the course of the network test, when people play this, they're going to start figuring out these maps and understanding the best route through, and it will become...
Ja wiem, że cel testów jest inny, ale testy to jedno, a sesja grania wcześniej dla influencerów to TBH drugie. Bo tam nie testujesz tego, jak to gra działa, tylko chcesz pokazać i zrobić hype wokół gry, nie? Więc no.
going to start figuring out these maps and understanding the best route through, and it will become familiar to them, which I don't think is the intended experience for Nighreign. I suspect in the full game, and I hope in the full game, maps are really, really randomized, and no 2 playthroughs are the same, so that's definitely something I'm going to be looking for in the full release. Anyway, I hope this video helped you understand
Fajny
more
materiał
about
od
the game.
Watiego.
I'll be playing the network test and recording our experiences, and I might make a video on that as well, so subscribe, stay tuned. Thank you to Bandai for flying me out and giving me this experience, and thank you for watching.
Kurde, no martwi mnie tylko właśnie ta losowość, nie? I najgorsze jest to, że właśnie jeszcze jej nie będę w stanie sprawdzić. Boli to. No ale dowiemy się tak czy inaczej po premierze, czy to jest warte uwagi na dłużej. To na pewno będzie fajna gra na 10-20 godzin. Pytanie, czy będzie fajna na 100 po prostu.